Yeah, it's you've been by the meetings. I don't not what I just put it on my state. We see anyone on the market. Are we live? Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. We're happy to see so many people coming out. Thank you very much for coming out, especially with this scary storm threatening. We'll try and get through this quickly and be here to answer your questions. My name is Mike Drake. I am the Assistant State Engineer over the Adjudication section. And it's me and my team that have been working on this project over the last few years. And we're really excited to reach what really is kind of the end of the road on this adjudication. We're excited to get out of you guys' hair and let you guys just move on with life. I know these adjudications can be a little disconcerting. It's never fun to receive a summons in the mail. And that's how we introduced ourselves to you guys, and so it's not the best way, but we're hopefully we can get good outcome through this and get through it and then move along. So tonight we're here to talk about the proposed determination for the Big Cottonwood subdivision, Big Cottonwood Creek subdivision. I presume everyone received notices in the mail about that. They each have water rights that are listed in this. We'll go through our agenda here a little bit, but maybe first let me just I introduce myself. We have a lot of different team members here tonight, and so once we've gone through this kind of more formal part of the presentation, you're welcome to grab one of us. We've got I'm counting 6 different laptops that we can pull up and look at your water right or address an issue you have. We can answer your questions, and so we'll stay here. I think we do have another event after this, and so we may try and accelerate things or take things out into the hallway. But we're here to try and answer your questions. Worst case scenario, we may just set up a meeting with you later on. So anyways, we're here to answer questions. So team members, we also have a representative from the Attorney General's office, Mike Ferguson back here. He represents us in this adjudication. And so we can handle any legal questions you may have as well relating to this. Okay, so we're going to go through the adjudication process again. This just to bring us up to speed with where we are. This started a few years ago for those that have been following this since it began. We're going to talk about how to access the proposed determination. Hopefully you've gotten to that point. If not, we can talk about it and we can guide you through that. We'll kind of bounce through the proposed determination and talk about how to read it, how to interpret it. I know this is water rights. It's really complex. It's confusing. We keep talking. We're doing this interviews right now, and we all go back on that first week that we joined the Division of Water Rights, and trying to understand water rights is a challenging thing. So I feel for you. It's definitely challenging. We'll talk about the hydrographic survey map. It's a document that's prepared jointly with the proposed determination and maintained in our office, and we'll talk about what it is and how to read that. And then, as I already stated, we'll take any questions. We can also take questions now and into the future, these coming weeks, through this email address that you see on the screen. This email address is forwarded to my email, so this is a way to contact me directly. And I may answer you directly. I may forward it to one of our other team members, but we'll make sure that your answers get or your questions get answered. Okay, and so you'll see it now. You'll also see it a little bit later on in the presentation at the end. We'll put that up and we'll provide a few more points of contact for you to turn to. All right, so, all right, there we go. I had one person taking a picture, so wanted to make sure you got that. Okay, so general adjudication. What is it? Well, so to understand this, you kind of need to go back in history a little bit about why we do this. If you're at all familiar with history in the state of Utah, clearly the Native Americans were here long before many of us, and a lot of the legal history of the state of Utah begins in 1847 when the pioneers rolled into the valley. And what followed was 50 years of water development leading up to statehood in 1897. And it wasn't until even a few years after that that the first water laws came into play in 1903. So that's a lot of water development that happened prior to formal water laws under the state of Utah. And it's an underlying premise of the Utah Constitution that it recognized all of those pre-existing uses of water, everything that happened prior to statehood and prior to those first water laws. So it recognizes it, but it doesn't quantify it. And one of the most important things that we do in the adjudication is we quantify these water rights fully. Now, in this area, the Big Cottonwood Decree defined a lot of the oldest water rights that divert water from the creek. And that was a decree that happened in the early 20th century. And so one of the big jobs we've had is to bring all of those water rights onto the records of the state engineer, quantify them, define exactly what they're good for, and bring them into the big water right picture. And so getting into the what here, an adjudication is an action in district court. And so all of this has been proceeding in the third district court. And what the adjudication does is it joins all water users and the state engineer and federal agencies into a comprehensive court case that determines the water rights in the area. And it's all governed under this state code that you see here, Title 73, Chapter 4. Okay, so why? I've addressed some of that about why we do it. We need to recognize what we call those pre-statutory water rights, those water rights that were established prior to the first water laws in 1903. A little wrinkle of Utah water law is it wasn't until 1935 that underground water rights were required to be were brought fully into the jurisdiction of the state engineer. So if someone established the use of an underground well prior to 1935, that's another type of water right that we want to get onto the records. And so that is what we've done through this adjudication is required that everyone that has a right bring it onto the records, make it part of the overall water right picture. Adjudications tend to prevent a multiplicity of lawsuits. It condenses it into one court case where it's well-defined, well-organized. It proceeds according to statute. There's other places in the state where many lawsuits come in between lots of different water users where an adjudication hasn't been done. So we condense that, we avoid that, we define the water rights. Everyone has their due process protections through the courts. We do also evaluate water rights for non-use. In the state of Utah, if you don't use your water right for 7 years, it may be subject to forfeiture. This is something that can only be done through the courts. The adjudication being a court case, this is one place we can look at it. So there are some water rights that have been forfeited through this process. In most cases, that happens when the person just is not there anymore. You know, maybe someone has died and not passed the water right on. No one knows who uses it, or they just have ceased to use it. And so we've removed those from the big picture, water right picture of what's going on. For those that remain, that is beneficial. That makes sure that the water resource is protected. Finally, this gets to the end result of what we're here today. We get a final comprehensive decree on all of these water rights. And everyone that has a right can now have the assurance that their right is is fully evaluated and decreed by the courts. It's the gold standard that we're looking for. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we talk about the adjudication process. This is the process that we've been going through. And if you forgive me, I'm going to get a little drink. My throat gets a little dry of these things.
Are you taking questions anytime?
We can. If they're very, very specific, it's probably best to leave it to the end. Do you have a question on what we've talked about?
Well, I'm just saying, entering into it now, listening for like what's the exact problem we're trying to solve? Is there someone whose rights have not been represented?
Yes, yeah. There's a vast number of water rights that have been to some degree or another unknown, and so through this process, we've evaluated all of the water rights in this geographic area. So that's ultimately the problem we're trying to solve here is get absolute clarity on all of the water rights.
So you have users that have been using water rights for some amount of time, and there's a question about whether or not they
not necessarily whether they own those, and so but it's more so what is the true extent of those water rights? What are they? What is the value? What is the use of them? And so we've defined that through this process. Some of the most important ones have been those older surface water rights out of Big Cottonwood Creek, and so that's where we've spent the majority of our time is evaluating all of that, all of the historical documents that deal with what those water rights are.
Having spent my life on the Big Cottonwood Creek, I'm listening for what the value add is for all the residents. And I'm listening. I want to hear that this isn't yet another line grab for water rights that I've been accustomed to for the last 50 years.
So certainly, I hope everyone's out there hearing that. It's certainly not on the land grab. The objective in evaluating these, and this is a foundational principle of water rights is, and water rights established, and we seek to manage these such that they don't get enlarged. And the state engineer's office in evaluating different applications that come before us, we're always seeking to evaluate what's the historic use of this water right. They can certainly modify and change and do different things, but it needs to stay within the limits that those rights were historically founded on.
Does that apply to the state use as well?
State use like what?
Well, so like Murray City's right next to me. And,
so that's a city, Murray City, right?
So do these actions all apply to the city use as well?
Yes. So the question is, they apply to cities. So cities are included. They're treated like any other water user. They have to have water rights. They have to report to the state on their water use. All those type of things apply to them. Yeah, great questions. Okay, so let's talk about the process. This is the adjudication process. You can see the colors denote kind of 3 different phases is how I like to think about it. We are at the very end of this. It starts, let me populate all these dates here. So the overall adjudication of what we call the Utah Lake Jordan River adjudication began a long time ago, 1944. This particular subdivision began in 2018. And so question might be, what were we doing before then? That's a great question. Some areas were done in the decades past. I think our predecessors were trying to tackle other areas than the most populated area in the state. It brings certain complications when you try to adjudicate in a highly populated area. But that is what we began to tackle back in that time frame. So 2018 is when we began this adjudication, and that was started with that notice and that summons that I talked about earlier. That definitely causes a lot of concerns when we do that, but that is what statute tells us to do. We had a public meeting just like this back in 2018, and then that led into what's called a notice to file claims, and then we took water user claims for 90 days following We published what's called this list of unclaimed rights. And so we compared all the claims we received to the records we had. And if we had a water right for which no one claimed, we published it on this list. And then there was 90 days to object to any of those water rights. If no one came to claim those, then we asked the court to abandon those water rights. And so those water rights were removed from the picture. Presumably these are the rights that no one's around to claim anymore, no one's using anymore. And so we want to just get those off to the side so we can evaluate the rights that someone has a vested interest in right now. So that's what we're talking about right now. So we're on to this third phase. We've evaluated all of the claims, and we've now published the proposed determination for this area. And that was published back on the 15th of December. That's when you guys all received notices in the mail. And on that date started a 90-day period to object. And so we're in the midst of that right now. That runs until March 14th of this year. And so it's really important that if you have a water right in this proposed determination, you evaluate it, identify whether there's an error. Please communicate with us throughout this. We'd love to hear. We want to correct this. We want to get a correct take on all of these water rights. And then please raise that during that period, and then we'll address that. Yes, go ahead. Another question.
So in the case where the water right may be incorrect or wasn't accounted for back in,
Like the list of unclaimed rights.
Yeah. So is this period something where we can still go back?
No, those ones that the courts the court has decreed those abandoned. And so all due process is kind of evaporating on that. And so it'd be extremely challenging at this point to go back and get one of those water rights.
Where were those 90 days to file an objection? Where were those listed?
So everyone was provided notice. So we send out, at that phase, we send out a notice to every property owner and to every water right owner address that we have on our records.
Okay.
And so we provided a very large, and we published it in the newspaper as well. That's what the statute tells us to do, and that's how we get a very broad notice that this list of unclaimed rights has been published, and you can object if there's an error on that thing. So we're in kind of a similar phase right now. 90 days to object to the proposed determination. So these are not the abandoned rights. These are the rights that we found to be in place, and are making a recommendation now to the court. And so there's a 90-day period to object. If we got something wrong, let us know, and we can work our way through that. And then, of course, we're doing the public meeting right now. And what follows this is we're expecting we're probably going to have some objections. There's errors, and then there's differences of opinion that we'll have to resolve. We'll work on resolving those objections, and then once all the objections have been resolved, we'll ask the court to decree this proposed determination, and that's the end of the road.
Will that be March 14th? Does all of that have to be resolved before March 14th?
No. Most typically, so this is just that. The 14th is the period to object. So if you need to object, it's really important to do it by then. We'll talk about how to do that in a minute. So if that's your question, I'll answer that. Usually it takes some months to even some years to get through the objections. So yeah, there will be time after that, definitely. Yeah.
And if you're a new homeowner and the unclaimed rights were wiped off, you still can't go back and
so
even if you know that there was some from historical conversations, you still can't.
Yeah, so it was in a way you kind of inherit the flaws of your predecessors in not responding to that notice to file claims, unfortunately. Yeah, so it may be worth talking a little bit more if you're in that situation, and I involve Mike Ferguson, the attorney. We can talk about that in a little bit more detail and offer you some advice. we've run into this issue on a few cases. So it'd be a great thing to talk about.
Great.
Okay, so, oh, yeah, another question.
Well, I didn't make you answer. It was a well, it was well. And it was several years ago, we went through this process with the county. I went to 3 meetings downtown. What they were trying to do was determine all the wells that were still operational. Some wells had a shopping center over them now, and et cetera, and they were weeding this out. And they had record of our rights, our water rights. They even had the amount we could use measured in acre feet. And so do I still have to fight these rights with Cottonwood Heights?
Let's see.
I'm assuming that because I got the letter, and that's the only, we're talking a well. And I want to say it was the county, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was Salt Lake City that did it. They wouldn't have done that because it's been since Cottonwood Heights has been around.
Yeah, I mean, the state of Utah is the only entity that has jurisdiction over water rights. And so, you know, anything that the county or cities would have been doing, I don't know, I'd have to understand. I'd have to find out more about that.
Then I'm assuming that you would have our wells showing up on your website.
Yeah, so
I'll just look that up.
I
don't, you know, I can find it here as well as there. So.
yeah, no, well, hopefully everything's been claimed now because we're kind of past that point of claiming things. But let's look at your water right after.
I should have looked it up before.
Oh, you're okay.
But
that's one of the reasons we're here. So we're happy to do it. So yeah, grab one of us after meeting and we'll look it up. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. Okay, so accessing the proposed determination. So again, I talked about notice already. We send a notice of the proposed determination to the water right owners listed on the records of the state engineer and to every claimant that made themselves known during that claim filing period. Also the registered agents for the corporate entities, councils of record. We provide notice to all of those people that might be affected by this. And then there you see the links that you can use to access the proposed determination. Hard copies are also available in our office, and you can access it also at the district court. And then there's a hydrographic survey, so it's a map, basically a map of this area. All of the water rights can be accessed also according to this link, and hard copies can be made that can be viewed in our office. But I'll define what some of these are in these coming slides here. So let's jump into that. So the proposed determination has several different sections. You can see them all here. I'm not going to go read them. You can we'll bounce through each one of these individually, so you can we can talk about each one. All right. So this is the title page. Some important information is on this page. First off, you find the district court in which that has jurisdiction over this adjudication, and that's the Third District Court for this area, for this adjudication. You also find the name of the adjudication and, very importantly, the civil number. So the civil number is what you would reference if you were to file an objection. This would make sure that it's filed on the appropriate court docket, basically. All right, this is the name of the adjudication, the Big Cottonwood Creek Subdivision, and then we assign each subdivision or each proposed to each subdivision an area and a book number. So 5718 is the number for this area. So moving on, this is an important page. This is the notice to water users that is included there. And again, the civil case number and the judge is listed here. Judge Scott oversees this adjudication. And then the important thing on this notice is instructions on how to file an objection. So the most important takeaway you need to have here is that the objection needs to be filed with the district court. There's phases in the adjudication where documents can be sent to our office, the state engineer's office. At this phase and with an objection, it must be filed with the district court. Okay, and that's again within the 90-day period that started on the 15th of December. Okay, and then after that, we move into the preamble. Preamble has a lot of general information. I'm not going to go through everything here, but it's worth reading. It establishes kind of the rules of the game for this area. We define things such as irrigation. A duty is how much water is necessary for a given use, like irrigation or stock watering or domestic use or something like that. So we define some of those criteria. In this area, one of the more important aspects is to establish the rules of the game when it comes to the rights that were defined by the Big Cottonwood Decree. And so the Big Cottonwood Decree established the manner in which water would be distributed amongst the various ditches and wards that were defined in that decree. And so this prior decree section, which is number 6 in the preamble, describes all of those conditions. Just touching this briefly, the Big Cottonwood Decree water rights, excuse me. The Big Cottonwood Decree water rights have actually been distributed across a couple different subdivisions. The lower part of Big Cottonwood Creek was published in the Holiday Proposed Determination, which was published a couple years ago. And so that included, if you're at all familiar with the Big Cottonwood Decree, the Big Ditch Award, Farm Harbor Ditch Awards, and Lower Canal Awards. And what is now part of this present proposed determination are, I'm not even going to read all of these, but these are all of the awards from the Big Cottonwood Decree that are addressed in this subdivision. Okay, just real quickly here, we're buzzing through this quickly. We can get on to where we can address some more questions here. But this is the geographical area that's affected by this adjudication. We do break things up geographically, and so we'll draw a boundary around an area that makes sense, and we'll kind of do bite-sized pieces as we move around. And so we try to follow drainages, and so that's why you generally see what here is what you might characterize as the upper stretches of the Cottonwood Creek drainage. And so it goes all the way up to the mountain ridges on the north, south, and east, and goes down to about the Van Winkle Expressway on the far west side. Okay, so moving on here, one of the first more meaningful sections of the proposed determination you'll find is what's called the priority schedule. And so what this is a listing of all water rights in order of priority date. And so in the state of Utah, water is distributed according to priority date. Those with the oldest dates get water first, and then it progresses down with those with the most recent dates. It's also organized by source. And so you see here, this is the Big Cottonwood Creek listing. And so these are all the various water rights from Big Cottonwood Creek. And we describe them by class. And this is harkening back to the Big Cottonwood Decree, which defined a primary right during the irrigation season. And then each of the rights are assigned a priority date, a flow rate, or a volume. And the water right number is identified, and then the owner of record is also identified. And then moving on, this is a typical listing in the proposed determination. So let's talk about what you'll see here. You'll see the water right number described, and then the owner of record. And it's worth talking about this real quickly. One of the common questions we get is that this name doesn't match who is now using the water. So it's very common where water rights have been conveyed, maybe with a land sale or something like that. We're not the office of record when it comes to ownership. The various county recorders' offices are the office of record. They're the ones that maintain who owns what. And so if the name here does not match up with what you know is the current situation, the current ownership situation on the water right, We may need to do a title update with our office. And what that involves is bringing these and filing what's called a report of conveyance to make it known to us that the water right has changed hands. So if this can get complex at times, if you have a question along these lines, let's talk about it after, because we can spin around in details here all night on this. But that's a very common thing. So if that's what you have going on, we'd love to talk with you and give you some advice. Okay, going on, this is the same water right, but what you'll see next is the type of water right and the quantity of water that's associated with it. All right, so this is an underground water claim and 1.05 acre feet of water. Next, the priority date and the source is described. And then as we move along, you'll get the point of diversion. This one happens to be a well, and so we have some information about the well. It's a 2-inch well that's 275 feet deep. We go on, we have some more very detailed water right type of information. These are things that aid us in administering this statewide system. And so it's called a water use group. Water use group is what defines different beneficial uses. And so this water use group has irrigation, and we describe the irrigation with some more details. You have the period of use. So it's just the period throughout the year in which you can use this water right. This generally aligns with the irrigation season, when you can realistically actually apply water and get something to grow. Obviously, right now is not part of the irrigation season as we look out the window. This water right, we have a defined full supply. So this water right is good for 0.21 acres of irrigation. And then on some water rights, you may get a difference in the group total. I won't go into this. If you have a question on this, I'm happy to inform you on what a group total is and what a sole supply is. But it's worth noting that the two numbers do exist. Next, we have the place of use that's described, and this is described according to a public land survey system. So if you're all familiar with it, we divide the land up into sections, townships, and ranges, and that describes different squares of land throughout the United States. And so this water right, if that's legible, there is in section 8, township 2 south, range 1 east of the Salt Lake Basin meridian. And then we further break that section up into quarter sections. And so this matrix describes that, and then we get ourselves down to the quarter sections, which are generally about 40 acres in size. And then we describe the irrigation that occurs in those areas as well. Some water rights have a little bit more information. There may be some general comments. This is one water right that has some additional clarity that needs to be given, and so a depletion limitation is given. Depletion is just how much water a given water right is permitted to actually consume, to deplete. This is water that's no longer available for other people. It's depleted by transpiration of plants or whatnot. Not every water right has comments. Most don't. And then there are a few other sections at the end. There occasionally we renumber water rights, and so we'll describe those renumberings here. This is the old water right number, and it's renumbered to a new water right number. These are generally just done for administrative purposes to try and make sense of water rights. And then getting on to the next section, this is where there are some water rights that we found to not be in place. And so, again, harkening back to the Utah water law, that if you don't use your water, it's subject to forfeiture. If we don't see that it's in use or hasn't been used for quite some time, we may recommend it to be forfeited. And so these water rights, there's a listing of water rights that have been forfeited, and they're described by water right number, owner, and then the point of diversion and source. There is one final section here. These are invalid water rights. And so these are water rights that are not established according to state law. That's kind of a loaded description. If you have a water right that is in this, we can talk with you and explain to you the positioning on that. But it's described similarly: water right number, owner of record, and the point of diversion or source. And then finally here, we describe everything. There's an alphabetic index at the end. This can be a great aid to identifying water rights by owner or by water right number or by source. And so, again, owner of record, source, water right number, and with a page on which you'll find that water right. All right, so I talked about this earlier. This simultaneously we file with the proposed determination, we prepare a map. It's called a hydrographic survey. This is a sampling of one of those maps. And on this map, we delineate all of the irrigated acreages. We identify the points of diversion where the water is taken from either wells or from a surface source, like a spring or a creek or something like that. And so again, you'll find those acreages, and then just some features on here, of course, North Arrow, Skill, and Bar Skill. And then there's a legend that describes how to read each individual map. And then it can be a little hard to navigate all of these different maps. And so there's a little map location, a key map down at the bottom that helps you figure out where you are. And so that kind of brings us to the end here. This is the point I made reference that we're going to have additional points of contact. So this is my information. You can contact me at that telephone number. That is my direct line. That's also my email address. And then we have John Ringwood that also has some information here. John, raise your hand for those in the room. So John can also be reached if you're having trouble with me. We also have, you can see, it's not just us two. We have a large group of people, and you could reach someone to answer your question at any time by calling that general adjudication number. And then that water rights _adjudication at utah.gov is a really good way to email us. Again, that gets forwarded to my email address. And so you can reach me directly through that. And of course, the Division of Water Rights, you can contact us there as well. And so this is a good time that we can take some more general questions. And if there's not a lot, we can kind of end the meeting and then start attacking maybe some of the more specific questions. But yes.
This is not involved in any water shares.
No, great question. Yes, the question was if this involves shares. And it's very important to draw a distinction between the two. So a share is ownership in an irrigation company. And so when we come through and adjudicate, we'll adjudicate the irrigation company's water rights, but we don't go so far as to work with the individual shareholders. That's a private relationship between you and the irrigation. And so if you have shares, you can be assured that we've talked with the entity that owns the water right that underlies those. Yeah, great question. I really should have brought that up earlier. So any other questions, like general questions that we could address? Yes.
So we're assuming that ground stand for water, that Salt Lake City's taking care of that interest for us, and also Big Cottonwood Ditch, the water company's taking care of our interest for that.
Yeah, that's correct. So I think so. Just for those, the question was about shares in Brown and Sanford or Big Cottonwood Tanner, and whether Salt Lake City has taken or the irrigation company has taken care of that. And you're right in your assumption. Salt Lake City has filed claims, and those water rights are fully recognized in this adjudication. Yeah, many of the historic ditch companies back in the early 1900s signed exchange agreements with Salt Lake City that they entered into a relationship of the water being used out of the canyons for municipal purposes, and other waters being brought up to provide for the ditch companies. And so those relationships are still in place, and we have a representative from Salt Lake City that is here that could answer any questions you have regarding that. But we have recognized all of those water rights that were subject to those exchange applications. Salt Lake City has fully participated in this adjudication. Any other general? Yes, sir.
Has there been a determination to cancel or forfeit any of the water rights in the Cottonwood Creek area?
Yeah, so that page that I showed you was a listing of some water rights that were forfeited. So a small number of water rights have been forfeited, yes.
So how do we know who's who?
You would review that proposed determination and,
So is the proposed determination to forfeit everybody's rights?
no, just those entities that were listed in the forfeited section. By far, most of the water rights in this particular subdivision were recognized. Yeah, great question. Any other general questions? Yes, sir.
You noticed that name up on
What name was it? Sorry.
Brady.
Okay.
And like I said, my brother's already gone down to the county or city and came out, looked at it, saw the word, using it. So I don't know why it's again now. We propose to be taken away.
Okay. Well, let's look at it and see. Frequently, there's
How many times a year do we have to say, use it, it's good, and we still have the right to use it, except.
well, let's look at that specific issue, and I think it's worth investigating with you afterwards. I don't know what happened with the county, but the Division of Water Rights has jurisdiction. The state of Utah has jurisdiction over all water rights. So I don't know what these counties would have been doing, but this adjudication is a one-time thing. We're in, we're done, and then we move along to another area. We don't come back and adjudicate these. We re-adjudicate these. Okay, but there's lots of things that could affect the water rights you saw. It could be that maybe someone owned 5 water rights and one of them wasn't used, but a few of them weren't. And so we recognized the one that wasn't used and got rid of the ones that weren't. There's lots of different things that could happen. Let's investigate your specific case that you're talking about. Yes.
For those rights that were up for forfeit, I saw a lot of my neighbors on there. Was there a process like, hey, you didn't claim these, and then was there a correspondence that was set up?
Yeah, so in that case, they did claim, so presumably a claim came in. If we publish it in the proposed determination, we received a claim, and then we went out, we did a field evaluation, and we were seeking to find out whether the water was in use, whether it was being used. And so through the course of that evaluation over, it started in 2018 and it just finished this last fall. Over that period, we at some point we made contact with the claimant and said, okay, you made a claim, let's look at it. And again, we can look at the specific details on each water right, but what I presume happened is we through that evaluation identified that there was no water abuse happening. And so we made the recommendation that the right be forfeit.
One issue also is I see old contacts that don't represent current rights.
Yeah.
So in that case, where would the notification from?
And then,
Catholic Diocese is one of the ones that looked at.
Yeah.
That's my neighbor. If they're no longer the current landowners, so would that notification have ever made it to that neighbor?
yeah, so if it's changed hands, great question. All right. So the question was, that we saw on the forfeited list the name of a water user that formerly owned the property, but they may not be the current owner of the property. And so how do they get notice? And that's a great question. So at least at the beginning of this process, we send notice to all property owners. And so they were all they were all given notice that they needed to participate in the adjudication. And then we made contact with them during the claim evaluation period and evaluated it. And there would have been some back and forth.
You would have never known who was conferred notice of that.
Well, but we would have gone out and searched for water use occurring. And so presumably, if you look at the exact details, we did not find water use happening. We do an exhaustive search to try and find whether the water is being used and who might be using it. If there's title, ownership issues that are outdated, we'll try and get them to update ownership through that process.
And so just to clarify, that means you would have looked to see who the current owner was, contacted them, and somehow know that through their non-contact, you needed to go out and do further investigation.
Well, we're broadly investigating every water right. We're searching around and trying to
I see
identify
a lot
water
of
uses.
uses on there. This, my father had a mission during this time, and I'm worried about everyone now I see on that list, and they have such old rates in there. I don't know how many of them are actually good for this.
Yeah, and that's, at this point, that's why it's very important at this point to file an objection if a water right has been inappropriately recommended for a forfeiture. File an objection and we'll reevaluate your rights. Another question?
Individual position, it's sports the back. And, already done on the slides.
Yeah, this is the end of the presentation, so maybe if there's any other general questions? Yes.
Some time ago, we received, I imagine most of us did, notices of requirements to meter our secondary water, provide a metering system. And there's the intent of that to ensure compliance with these limits of your acre feeds that are being determined here, or what's the connection between those two?
So the requirement to meter secondary water systems is a separate requirement. It's not prompted by anything connected to the adjudication. It was prompted by a bill that ran through the legislature that, they wanted to start metering all secondary water first and foremost. Will there be a connection made at some point between the two? Yeah, maybe. I think ultimately the reason they wanted to start metering secondary water systems was at some point to start to understand how water is used, where it's used, and then if need be to ensure compliance, that people are staying within their water rights. I'm curious what company or entity you're associated with, because in many cases, the rights actually permit quite a bit of variability in how much water can be diverted at any time. So it may actually be immaterial as far as the connection between the water rights and the metering that you might be doing under those.
And we've kind of been a little bit of a question mark in there, how that was going to be applied to our situation with the Upper Ellison, which basically is Salt Lake City water.
Yeah.
And we have a contract right for delivery of water, not the water right itself.
Yeah.
And so, the ability to meter that would have been just staggering, the cost of trying to do that at each individual user's level. We don't know if Salt Lake City would be required to meter that and where that all was going to go.
Yeah.
So,
And there's there was movement last legislative session on that topic, and so we can chat about that more. It gives the ability to do, instead of at each individual connection, to do more of I'm trying to remember what it's called, a kind of a master meter type idea. But we can chat about that more. You'd have to dig up some statute to try and answer that question effectively.
Okay.
But the connection with Salt Lake City is key there, and that Salt Lake City is going to make sure that they definitely won't have any desire to deliver more water than is due under the contract. And so I think we don't really have any concerns of over use of water, at least according to that contract in that case. So yeah, interesting case. Yeah.
So all these water rights that are being taken away, what happens to them?
Yeah, so the question is, all these water rights that are being forfeited, what happens to them? They're simply removed from the records of the state engineer. They're no longer of any benefit. What statute says is that they return to either be available for appropriation or to provide water for those that already have water rights. And so the Salt Lake Valley is one in which there's more paper water than there is wet water. And so it is not an area that we would anticipate opening up for new appropriations of water, so no new water rights. And so those forfeited water rights are just removed from the pile of paper water rights that have piled up over the years. And so we're closer to equilibrium with with how much wet water there is. Does that make sense? So what I'm saying is there's no change. They're just removed from the records. They're not water. They're not valid waters that can be exercised anymore. Okay, let's go ahead and close it up. We're still happy to take questions after this. Are there any online questions that have come in? Okay, great. If you are online and you'd like to send us a question, those email addresses are probably the best way, because I think we're going to go in and end the recording and close the meeting. Thank you so much to everyone, and let us know if you have any questions.